Welcome back to Lesson 5, Navigating Zoning and Regulatory Requirements. In this lesson, we'll talk a little bit more about zoning, about environmental things, and other factors that you need to consider before developing on a particular piece of land. Now, when you look at these two images, you see a lot of different things. You see pretty much a grid of housing. You see some commercial development. You see some roads. You see some industrial development, parking lots, and all sorts of things. This is kind of the best, these are rather the best two images that can capture of the variety of zoning opportunities in a particular parcel of land. So in one piece of land or in one area, you can see residential, you can see commercial, you can see industrial, you can see light industrial, you can see all sorts of different types of uses of the property. Your job as a developer is to understand what can be built here. When you know what can be built there, you know two things. You know if you want to stick with what the current use is, thus making your life easier, and you go straight to permitting. Or you know if you've got to petition for rezoning and ask the city or the county if you can rezone the property to the intended use that you have or your client has. So if the property is currently zoned commercial and you want to make it residential, multifamily, you got to rezone. If the property is currently residential and you want to make it commercial, you've got to rezone. All of the rezoning requires an application. It requires a process. It likely is going to require a meeting with the city officials. Either way, you have to understand the zoning. Now, the key to this whole entire process is your city and your county and your state. So this image here, I'm pictured with all of the stakeholders of the first development. So the family is on the left, but the city officials, they are on the right. Those are city council members who had a say-so in the vote of whether or not we got rezoned, which we did successfully get rezoned. They also had a say-so in what went on the property, because when we got rezoned, we had to get their input, the zoning office's input, and everyone's input on whether or not we could build what we wanted to build on this site. And spoiler alert, we were able to get 13 townhomes approved on a site of over 1 acre, just 1 acre. So you can develop anything really, but 1 acre, just over 1 acre was small. We started off with a desire to develop 18. And with the city's support and help and guidance, we had to reduce that amount because we also had zoning requirements that we had to meet. So your city, your county, and your state officials are the key to making sure you can be in compliance with what the current zoning is or what the future zoning is supposed to be or could be. Now, very important, if you have to rezone and you know that you're going to shift from one use to another, when you start to have you submit your rezoning application on your behalf or the behalf of your client, you have to meet certain criteria to even submit the application. So take care of those, submit your application, and wait for your meeting. Now, here's how you prepare for the meeting and just after the meeting. First, you got to learn how to make friends. No one in the city office, city planning office, zoning office should be talking about you from a negative perspective. If they are, you better change your attitude real quick because these people are working people just like you and I, but they can make your life very difficult if you are not careful. So make friends. Don't bribe anybody. Don't even attempt to bribe any city or public official, but be nice. Make friends and be nice. Ask lots of questions, especially as a new developer, because the intellectual curiosity will set you apart. It'll make it seem like, which you are really learning information for the first time, but it'll also make you seem like a person who's open to feedback because you are. You also want to take their suggestions. Our first DRC meeting with a particular city, they said, hey, have you ever thought about making the townhomes face this way instead of that way? We said we hadn't thought about that, but we will take that suggestion if that's what you prefer. And they did, and we took the suggestion and we flipped them. That's not a big deal at all. So take their suggestions, be open to that. Prepare for meetings accordingly. You may think, oh, it doesn't take all that to get ready for a meeting. Yeah, it does. Prepare a PowerPoint, make it easy for people to find information. Don't make it difficult and don't hide information. Be upfront, be open, be transparent. Show up on time and in person. If you have a meeting and you're preparing for the meeting, maybe you have a pre-meeting with someone from the zoning or planning office who is going to be at the city council meeting or the county commissioners meeting or wherever you have to present your project. If you go meet with them, be on time, be early, show up in person, because everyone doesn't come to the city offices in person. Sometimes they email and email and email and email and email. Wouldn't it be a great touch if you showed up in person to an appointment and you were nice and kind, seeking information, and were able to establish a good relationship with the city? I think so. So be open to that, but also make sure you always show up on time if you have an appointment. They're very busy people and they process so many applications daily. So don't be the one that they talk about behind closed doors as having a problem or something like that. Also, be nice, but be firm. If there are things that you are deeply concerned about, make those known, but be nice about it. Always use your courteous voice. Always be as pleasant as you can. And lastly, have a good team who knows how to respond to the city and planning offices and zoning officials in a timely manner. If you have an engineer on your team, which you should, and an architect on your team, which you should, they should be able to get back to the city and the planning office as soon as possible when they provide feedback or any kind of suggestions or corrections that need to be made. I will never forget the time that I went to, or we turned in our first plans for a particular development, and we received back the feedback, and we had over 70 comments. When you have 70 comments on your plans, you have to kind of go back to square one. And that required us to go back to a place where I met with the architect and the engineer all in the same room. So we had to have a separate meeting just so we could go through all the comments and be able to source them to whoever was supposed to fix that thing. And then we got back to the city in a timely manner. That is the type of team you want that is willing to sit down with you and work through all the issues. And then in your post-meeting follow-up, at this point, you've had the meeting, you don't know what the results are just yet, or maybe you do if they voted in front of your face, depends on the type of meeting. Then you want to send thank you emails and or cards, but never send any gifts because that can be perceived as bribery. So do not send the city officials or the county officials any gifts. As much as you might be tempted, especially if your zoning passes just fine, you do not want to send any types of gifts. Then follow up with an email, as I mentioned before, thanking them for their time and summarizing what you saw happen or what you know happened during the meeting, especially if they make a recommendation during the meeting to make a change. This happened to me where one of the city council people said, hey, I want this, this, and this. Please make sure it is on record that this is what I want added. If you all are willing to do this, then you will have my vote. And we were willing to do that, so we had that particular person's vote. So when you write your email summarizing what happened, you can include, and this council person said that we would do this. Now they've got record of it. They are absolutely going to hold you to the fire. But it makes it seem more professional when you come back and say, I heard you and I'm going to do what you suggested, right? Also, tell them when you anticipate getting back to them on their feedback or any outstanding items. There have been many times where I said, let me get with the engineer, let me get with the architect, and I'll get back to you in about a week. If it doesn't happen that a week is enough time, then email again and say, hey, I thought it was going to be about a week. I'm going to need another week to get back to you. Just keep the lines of communication open. And always, always, always keep moving forward. Just keep going. This process, as I mentioned earlier, is long and daunting, but you can do it. So just keep moving forward. And that concludes Lesson 5 on zoning, regulatory compliance, and meeting with your city officials and county officials.